going through the struggles I went through and changing the things I changed was scary. I guess the one thing I learned the most is we got to learn to forgive ourselves. And that doesn't happen. You don't just sit down and say, okay, I forgive all the stuff I've done, I'm good, now move forward. It's a long process of finding who you are, what you've done, what made you do it, what's the reasoning behind it, the patterns so you don't continue it. That's huge, and I still do that every day, and I'll do that every single day.
Welcome everyone to this episode of What Matters Most. Today in studio we have Stephen Bedford. We have a mutual friend that you've seen on a previous episode, Scott McDermott. He's a personal trainer, and so this is kind of where the connection is. Stephen is well, you train and do stuff with him. Yeah. And work under him, and of course I did a documentary with Scott and have had years of history with him, and so yeah, we kind of like connected through that, and I see you on Facebook a lot, and I love your posts and how like excited you are with the world, especially when you're out there training, riding a bike. It's really fun to kind of like, you know, just see your journey.
Stephen, you're an expert in experience, and I'm excited to hear your story. Your story is one of absolute inspiration, and I don't really know fully all of it, so I'm excited to hear what you have to say and share.
I'll do my best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell us about yourself.
I'm a father, I'm a brother, and I'm a friend. That's the way I describe myself. And I feel very fortunate and blessed to be able to get where I am at today. Well, I was engaged for 7 years. It was a very unhealthy relationship looking back on it now. We were both very naive young kids. It was back and forth a lot. We'd break up, we'd get back together. It was very unhealthy. I was in a very unhealthy place in my life at that time too, doing a lot of drinking and partying and stuff. And we ended up having a child. We got back together after many breakups. We ended up having a child together, and we ended up splitting when my daughter was 18 months. And I remember it was a very, very crushing experience. I came home from work and everything was packed up, and her parents were there, and my little girl was sitting on the kitchen table in her snow outfit, and I had to hug her for the last time, as I thought it was going to be the last time. That was a very difficult thing, and it was a very, very nasty divorce. Even though we weren't married, it was a divorce. We went through a lot of legal battles, and it was a terrible, terrible experience. I don't wish that on anybody. We finally got it resolved shortly after I got remarried. Very soon after we got together, we got pregnant, and we were married. And she had two kids of her own at that time, and from her previous marriage, and they were young. And I raised them like they were my own, with my daughter from my first and my son with my second. And life kind of took hold of me. I fell into a really dark place, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. I fell into addiction pretty hard. I'm a recovering alcoholic. I'm glad to say today I'm over 4 years sober, but I fell really hard. And it started when my brother passed away, is really when it started for me. He passed away suddenly of a freak heart anomaly. I found out on Facebook that he passed away, and I just about crashed my truck. It was a terrible, terrible time in my life. And looking back on it, that's when my drinking started getting worse. I've been drinking since I was 11. I was smoking since I was 11. I grew up into it very early. But that's when it started turning. It was no longer drinking for weekends. A Tuesday night was a weekend for me. And I lived in that sense for about 8 years, damaging everything I touched in the process. At the time, I didn't know it. So in 2018, my father passed away suddenly. And that hit me pretty hard. Again, it was out of nowhere, just a heart attack, and it took him. And so we got the phone call, and it was terrible. And I remember when I said goodbye to him, I promised him that I'd change, because he was my mentor. He was my everything. I ran to him at the worst of times, and I ran to him at the best of times. And I thought I handled myself pretty well at his funeral. That's actually when I came out and told my family that I was an alcoholic. I think more or less just so they'd let me drink. It wasn't, I had no merit behind it. It wasn't for any good sake, and I thought I handled myself pretty well. I didn't drink too much, and then I did. When I got back home from the funeral, I went really deep. I was now up to about 60 ounces of whiskey a day minimum. And it took hold of my life completely. I didn't care about anything. It was a very dark time when you live in a household with you're married and you have kids. My kids weren't enough for me to stop. And I drank like that for a few more years, and I realized that I kind of fell into a pit of despair, self-pity, a hole of just complete hell is what I call it. I fell captor to my addiction. It was the worst best friend you'll ever have. And I've said lots, it was never a problem until it was. And I mean that because I'm sure it was a problem, and I know it was a problem, but I never realized how much of a problem it was until the day I tried to quit. And the day I really looked at myself and said, okay, no more. And that day for me was November 5th, 2019 at 5:26 a.m. That'll be burned in my mind forever. I decided to check myself into detox. And so I phoned them. It was snowing that morning. I had about 80 ounces of whiskey in me. I couldn't even stand up. And so I emailed them. I seen that email. It's not very coherent, but I can get the gist out of it. And I emailed the detox place here in Red Deer. And it's a first come, first serve. They also act as a homeless shelter. So I was going in the next morning, and they were full. So with addiction, you tend to justify everything in your head, right? So already I was coming up with excuses. I don't have to go. This is a sign, right? So I don't know what made me do it, but I checked myself into Edmonton. I drove up to Edmonton, and I got my brother to drop me off at the Alberta Health Services Detox Center at Edmonton. And that's really where my whole journey began. I walked in, they walked me in there, they did tests, and they told me I took a chance because this is a first come, first serve. Likely I wouldn't get in. And so I'm waiting in the room already, planning my relapse, already planning something. And they came back and said, we're booking you in. Your vitals are all over the place. You're the worst person we've seen in a long time. Which was bittersweet. But they talk about alcohol being one of the most addictive drugs and the most deadly to come off of. I don't call it unfortunate because it was very fortunate that I went through this, but I can attest to that firsthand. Day 3 in detox, I was walking down from my bedroom. I didn't leave my bed for almost 3 days. I walked down the stairs to go grab food, and I collapsed. I don't remember much. I just remember it going really dark. And I think if anyone's ever passed out, they can understand that feeling. And my heart stopped. I woke up in the doctor's gurney with machines and everything hooked around me. Came to and kind of realized what happened. The doctors were telling me what happened, so I was on close watch. Day 4, it happened again. So I was in very bad shape. I had planned to go to a rehab center after. I don't know why I didn't. I think that, not to make light of it, dying was the lowest I could hit, and really changed my mind on things and really helped me kind of realize the priority of my life and what was important to me and what I needed to do. I didn't think I was that far gone. I didn't, no one does, I don't think. And I didn't know I was addicted. I didn't know any of that stuff. I was just a very scared and lonely person. So I got out of detox and went back home to where I was married with my wife, and we had 3 kids there, 2 stepkids and our youngest son together. And I tried to live life. I was very unhealthy still. I was still smoking. I wasn't drinking, but I was very unhealthy. I started gaining weight dramatically. About a year went past and I was a year sober. I decided to leave my wife, which was a hard realization for me because I always thought that they would leave me, right? Never did I think, I would leave. I was so scared of losing my wife and losing my kids and losing everything that I didn't stop and take into account what I wanted, what was good for me, what was good for our family. And so I decided to leave. I was scared because my first marriage, my daughter was taken away from me at 18 months. And I battle it still to this day. I battle with not seeing her. At some times I haven't seen her since January of 2023. It's tough. So I stayed in that unhealthy relationship, and that was a part of my addictions I've learned, is I stayed in that, even though it was uncomfortable, it was known. And people tend to stay in patterns even though they're unhealthy. And I stayed in there, and I'm glad I changed because I played all the worst scenarios in my head over and over again. And not once would I think that my son would come live with me, that we would grow together, and that I would be a good friend to my ex-wife. That almost happened within months. My son came and lived with me from day one. He helped me move and stuff. He took a day off school to help me. We got pizza, and he never left. That's coming up on 3 years ago. And my ex-wife and I chat all the time. We go to sporting events for my kids. We talk all the time. We text all the time. There's no fighting. We're actually friends now, which I'll tell you, I never thought in a million years that would happen. I had that dark picture painted for me my first divorce, so I didn't think that was possible, especially with everything that I've done, right? I caused a lot of damage with my addiction, with just not being present, with financial struggles. Like I almost bankrupted our entire family. We were eating out of the food bank to feed my 4 kids. Like it was tough. And I do all that while still drinking. Right? That didn't faze me. And it's tough. But that's when I really started to think, when I moved out, I really started to think about me, what I needed to do for me. Right? I started realizing how my father passed away of a heart attack. We have heart disease in our family. Very unhealthy. I was very unhealthy. Even though I didn't drink, I was very unhealthy. Still very grumpy, still very self-pity, full of anger and fear. And so I've known Scott from when he owned a gym in Sylvan. And I've reached out to him lots, and he'll attest to this. He gets it all the time. I'd poke in. Hey, what's this all about? How much does this cost? And I'd run away, right? Just to kind of do my due diligence. And finally, I just took the plunge and said, look, let's work together. I'm ready. Let's do this. And I lost about 75 or 85 pounds in a matter of 5 to 8 months. I picked up, I quit smoking. I quit drinking coffee. I quit everything. My mother says I'm a good quitter. I'm excellent at quitting things. And I changed my life around. And I'm very active with all my kids. Even my stepkids, I'm still very involved with their lives. I'll always be a part of their lives. I love children. I wanted 10 of them. I'm a big kid, and I'm never going to grow up. That's who I am. But going through the struggles I went through and changing the things I changed was scary. I guess the one thing I learned the most is we got to learn to forgive ourselves And that doesn't happen. You don't just sit down and say, okay, I forgive all the stuff I've done, I'm good, now move forward. It's a long process of finding who you are, what you've done, what made you do it, what's the reasoning behind it, the patterns so you don't continue it. That's huge, and I still do that every day, and I'll do that every single day. It's when my children looked at me and they said, Dad, we love who you are, we love who you've become. And I've been sober 4 years, so I can't wait for the next 10 years what will happen. It's changed everything. It's made me realize what's important to me. I've understood that I am an alcoholic and what that means, and I live with it. And I'm a proud alcoholic, because without that I would not be here today and understand who I am and what I can do today. In every walk of life, addiction is present, or mental illness is present, or divorce is present. You know, we were speaking earlier when I said one of my favorite sayings to share with people is, I'm living life for the first time too. That's a very powerful statement, I think, and I can't remember where I heard it. I can't take credit for it. That's where I can, but I shouldn't. It's a very, very passionate saying for me, because it speaks louder than anything. We're all in this life. We all start somewhere. We've all made grave mistakes that we can regret and live and dwell in, and I dwelled in it for years. Or we can realize, okay, well, that didn't work, or okay, that sucks, and look at my life. What do I do now to get out of that? Where do I want to go? And, you know, right now you might not know that. If you would ask me when I was in the beginning of my addiction, I didn't know anything. I didn't know I was an addict. I didn't know, right? Scott's helped me a lot, and I'll plug him a bit. He's helped me with a lot of the perspective and the psychology behind things, where it's many, many small steps will equal one giant step. And I've seen that working with him. I didn't think I could lose 85 pounds in 5 months. I think he was shocked. And it's not about the weight, it's about the dedication and the change and everything. It was my mood. I'm no longer a grumpy guy. If you look at my Facebook, if you go back 5-6 years before we knew each other, you'll never see me smiling. I was angry. I was very unhappy. I was angry. And now I'm a goof. I'm making funny faces all the time. I'm doing silly, stupid things. But that's because I think I found a new purpose in life. And if I could share that and help people understand that it doesn't matter how dark and how deep you are, there's always a way out in everything. I'm thankful that I have a good relationship with my ex-wife. Right? That was one thing that I was going to struggle with, because I didn't want a repeat of what happened with my daughter and my first ex, right? And it's amazing. It's amazing that we're still learning, and we'll always be learning, but co-parenting is very important, because unfortunately it's more common to be in a blended family nowadays than it is to have a normal family, if you want to call them normal, right? I think people need to realize that it's a very common thing. However, I don't think people have the tools or knowledge on how to do that. Again, we're living our first life, and we need to understand how to do that. And if talking to people with life experience that have done it, like I talk to people, I go to counseling still too, and I talk to lots of people, right? I'll always do that. I'm an advocate to talk your feelings out, because it helps. It definitely helps.
Oh, yeah.
So, I love what you shared. It's so incredible, just your whole story. I just we could listen to you for so long here. I want to go back to because when you talk about change and all of this change that you've experienced through, it's just sounds like night and day, and that part is so incredible. If you go back to that moment where you checked yourself in to rehab, it's kind of like this turning point. So where were you at, and what's the, I guess the why or the motivation that led you to take that step, to get there in your life?
How did I get to making that choice?
Yeah.
I'll paint a picture for you. I was, with everything and how far my life has fell into that hole at that point, I was sitting on my living room floor, with an empty 60-ounce bottle of whiskey. It was the second one I had that night. It was 5:26 in the morning on a Tuesday morning. It was snowing. I had to be at work in half an hour. This isn't the first time I've done this. Then it wouldn't be the last, I thought, right? That's the way I lived. I was just constantly in hell. And I was scared. I didn't know what to do. I was at complete loss. Fear ruled my life and everything. I was afraid of everything. And so what I always say, it falls hand in hand with addiction. It's a spiral. I was uneasy, I was scared, I was nervous, so I drank. I started to feel better. I zoned out, top of the world. Probably passed out. Wake up, feel guilt, regret, shame, fear, scared, alone. So I drank, and it was a friggin' cycle. And at that time, I've been through that cycle for decades. And it was pure desperation at that point. And I'm going to share, I'm not the most religious person, but I am a very spiritual person, especially now. I've gained a new found sense of spirituality, which are two completely different things in my perspective. And whatever happened and whatever caused me to do it, whatever made me just to say, you know what, enough's enough, you need help. And I think it's one moment I remember exactly is when I was trying to stand up to go to bed and I couldn't, I fell over. And I literally slept on the floor there because I couldn't get up. And so as I'm laying there is when I emailed. It was almost like something out of a horrible 80s television or advertisement for, the help I can't get up, but in a very dark way. And I couldn't get up and I emailed. And again, back to this, every small step. Right, and that was my first small step, and it was at a complete desperation. I still am very hazy about a lot of it. I don't remember it, and you know what? I might get that back. I might not, but it's the hardest thing for me to help people realize, because one thing as an alcoholic or an addict, you can't tell anyone to do anything. I'll never give advice to anybody. I'll share what I went through. And I'll help you realize and help you figure out your own. But if someone would come to me and say, "Get up, go to detox," no, no thanks. Right? You don't do that. It's received as negative, even though it's meant in the most positive ways. But it was a pure desperation and fear that I formed, and I'm glad I did, because my health was at more of a risk than I thought.
Mm-hmm. Obviously,
and so that's where the spirituality, I think, comes into it, as something out there, whatever that be was telling me, now or never. Right. And I don't recommend waiting for that moment to come, because I almost didn't make it out of that.
Right. Obviously, you have a lot of work to do still.
Definitely. Always.
Like lots of inspiring people. Yeah. So you survived that because we need you here.
Something made it happen, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. That's amazing. When you were going through that, what surprised me is you said after all of that, you finally left your wife. Mm. I think it's amazing that she didn't leave.
Oh, me too.
Yeah. So, and that you're friends now. Like, how did she respond to you going through all of this?
It was different. I can't speak for her side. I can only imagine what she had to go through. Any addiction is a family addiction. Mm-hmm. It affects everybody. It affected everyone in my life. My children, my friends, everybody. My work, my employers, my relationships. Mm-hmm. Every aspect of my life was. So I praise her. I praise both my exes for that, and everyone that dealt with me when I was like that. I was not a good person at that time. I was a scared little person, and although I wasn't in a little person body anymore, I was still stunted by my 11-year-old brain that when I started using and drinking, right? So she stuck with me. Whether she wanted to or not, she did. And I don't look lightly on that. I do appreciate all of that. Even though she was there and stayed in the relationship, as did I think it was for reasons other than the desire to be married and the love, right? I think we fell out of love a long time ago. And that did surprise me too, to become friends with her. Like I said, that picture was painted for me, and I've seen so many negative divorces and splits, and I had one already, that I was like, okay, well, this is going to be great, and I'm sober now. How is this going to look? You know, so many triggers are right there going, please work. Yeah. But I knew at the time that if I stayed in that relationship, I might not stay sober. And not to blame her, but to blame the situation in life. Sometimes two people aren't meant to be together. We entered into a relationship on bad pretense. Like I don't think we should have been together. We came together for a reason. Mm-hmm. We have a great son out of it. He's a goofball just like me, and I love him. And it brought us together, and I had 2 stepkids out of it. But we both made some huge mistakes in our marriage, and we both don't think we should have been married. So when we split, I share this as a funny thing. I remember talking, I said, why don't we just end this before we want to kill each other? To put it the most brass tacks way, right? Because there's times in any relationship where you're there. Like you might not mean it, but you're there and you don't want to look at that person, right? And I don't say this to give up on a relationship, because I believe every relationship happens for a purpose. And if you want it to work, it takes work. For any relationship, whether it's a professional relationship or a romantic relationship or any relationship, it takes work. The foundation wasn't there. The building blocks weren't there. Nothing was there. So when we split and we became friends almost right away, that told me right there that there is a connection there, but it definitely isn't a romantic one. And even if there wasn't, maturity, I was not mature. Emotionally, I'm a very emotional person, but emotionally I wasn't mature. I didn't know how to handle my emotions. Every emotion freaked me out. I was afraid of everything. So happy, sad, mad, angry, excited, celebratory, everything, I would drink. Didn't matter what it was. Yeah. One person says, and I like sharing this, is I would celebrate the opening of a pack of cigarettes by drinking. Like, that's where it was, right? It didn't matter what it was. So I was very enlightened and very happy when we got to be friends right away. Our divorce is so amicable. I dealt with the legal side of it, and so I paid for the divorce side. And then, she come in with her lawyers, but we talk about it over the phone. Hey, do you want this in there? No. Okay, we'll take that out. And then we sign it, and boom. That doesn't happen. So I was like, so that maybe was the universe or something saying, okay, you can have one good thing, Steve. You've done all this, you can have one. So I'll take that with a grain of salt.
But I think my observation there, and I'll kind of put in, because I feel like sometimes when we get to that stage where it's divorce, we kind of start playing a blame game, or but I sense in your situation where there was some accountability, and you're like, you know what, let's take a step back and kind of work this through. But like, we can kind of set those emotions aside, or those resentments and whatever. Like, that's a difficult thing to do. And I like, this is like, it's so fascinating to hear a story, because these aren't necessarily our experiences. But it's I think part of it is that accountability. Like you were in a humble situation, or you have been over the last few years, is like to say, you know what, I'm a mess. I've got things that I need to work on. You're like saying that this needs to happen on my own terms, and like, and pulling yourself out of that situation. But I think in the same sense, I think those are the things that we can kind of learn from your situation. I think there's that sense of like accountability as we approach our relationships. Like, I'm not perfect, but really recognize, hey, neither of us are perfect. And like you said, I love that. I just take that. Like, we're going through. What did you say? We're going through this for a first time. This is our life is this is our only time. Like, it's just, so we don't no second chances, and of course we mess up, and it's like we need to give ourselves some grace.
We definitely do, and I could speak on resentment, and I could speak on forgiveness, and I'll touch on a little bit here. Again, I won't give advice, but what I'll share is my experience, and I've learned this through different avenues, through addictions, through mental health, counseling, through a lot of stuff. But accountability is huge. I used to play that for me, right? So I was an alcoholic. My life sucked. Everything sucked. I was dead broke. I racked up 2 credit cards over $100,000 just in alcohol. I was feeding my kids at the food bank. My relationship was terrible. I was overweight. I was unhealthy in every aspect. Like, my life was terrible. I never looked at any positive, and I blamed everyone else. I never once said, oh, what did you do? So, you know, what did you portray in this? What was your part? Like, I would just drink and complain, and I just fell further and further. Now, I say it sounds easier than it is to get out of that, and it sounds, you know, words are very broad sometimes, but over time, small steps, looking at what I played in every role in my aspect, kind of go back and see situations, key situations that pop in. And this is a continuative thing all throughout your life, which I've found. You don't just do it once and be like, okay, good. You don't graduate from this. So, but you take into account, for example, take into account my marriage. I'll take into account something that happened, one event that happened, like, hey, well, what did I do? The way that our minds are wired, I think, is we're fear-based and we're reactive. So when you can go back and kind of take a step back and breathe, say, what did I do? What was my part? So you can start doing that. You'll feel emotions come into it of how you felt. Well, no, that doesn't matter. What was my part? Not how I felt and not what they did to make me feel something. Not what was my part. Then own your part. That's it. Just own your part. Forgive yourself for your part. It sounds super easy. It is one of the hardest things to do. But do that in everything in your life, in every aspect of your life. Okay, you walked into a meeting, right? You were late, you threw your coffee down, right? You did this. Well, people are upset at you, now you're getting mad, like, give me a break, I'm running late. Well, no, how did you react when you went in there? You started kind of aggressive. Just own that.
Yeah.
And change things on you for the better. And you'd be surprised on how fast your life will change around. And through addictions, you know, it teaches you stuff where apologize when it's good to apologize, and don't apologize for you to make yourself feel better. Apologize for your actions and bury that resentment so you don't carry it anymore. Your backpack gets lighter every time you do that, but don't do it if it's going to cause more harm. If it's going to cause more harm, there's no sense in it, because you're going to compile what's already there. So, and sometimes it takes years, sometimes it takes lifetimes, sometimes it never happens. One I really struggled with was burying my dad. A lot of resentments, a lot of things left unsaid. But I worked through that, and there's different ways you can go about it. I turned to a pastor. I'm not religious, but I turned to him. It was the weirdest experience I've ever dealt with. He role played with me. He just said, Steve, he got down on his knees in front of me. Never met this man ever. And he said, I'm your father right now. That's it. And he looked at me and he grabbed my legs and he's on the floor and he's like, I love you and I forgive you. There's nothing you could do that would make me hate you or angry at you. I am your father. I'm here to help you. And I forgive you. And I tell you, I cried for about a day. But that was more powerful than I thought it would ever be. Right? I was going in there with assumptions that, okay, I'm going to see a pastor, I'm not religious. So he didn't even bring religion into it. My son's in football, first year. And I got the opportunity to become an assistant trainer on the team. So it just kind of progressed where someone left and I got on. Like I said, I'm a big goofball. I'm a kid. So I bought these tracksuits. And I dressed up for the games. And I riled the kids up and I do this stuff. My ex-wife was on the sidelines. My brother and his wife and my nephew came down from Edmonton and they're watching the game. And the entire game, my ex-wife had her head down laughing, going, why is he wearing this? Why is he wearing this, right? She came after him and, you know, we kind of went back and forth about it, but we laughed about it. And she knows that I'm a goofball. And she sees that part of me again that, you know, I was when we met.
Right.
And she's like, oh, you're embarrassing me. And I said, yeah, but you don't have to worry about it now because we're not together. She's like, oh yeah, you're right. Right? Like, and we kind of realized that life does go on. We're still the same people. Yeah. And that's good because with my ex-wife, we can do that stuff at the events, or I can't wait for graduations and stuff like that, right? Where I can I can go up there and I can give her a hug and say, look what we did. Look what we did together, right? And that's great because we did. Regardless of anything that happened in our life, we, our parents, were standing here and we're there. You got to show the kids that family matters, and the only way to do that is to make family matter. And with my first ex, unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. Again, I'll never stop trying to heal and come up with resolution on that. I got demons in my closet that I got to be accountable for too through my life, right? As an alcoholic, there's things and times where family wasn't first to me, right? Where I've done some damage to my children, and I have to be accountable for that. And in due time, I will, right? In due time, I will. And if I don't get the chance, they'll know. Actions speak louder than words.
I think this whole story is amazing. First of all, because of like what keeps coming to my mind as I hear you talk about accountability and setting feelings aside and just being responsible for your actions, regardless of how you felt or how others made you feel. Did you get coached in that? Did you, how long did it take you to get to that process? And also, was there a specific time where you felt like, wow, I finally forgive myself for everything?
Great questions. Coaching, yes. So I do work through 12-step programs, and I do have sponsors, and I do sponsor people. With those 12 steps shows you kind of ways to go about it, and the certain steps, and they're in order for a reason, right, to kind of help you out. I always say that these steps are for everybody. They are a way of life. 99% of them have nothing to do with alcohol or drugs. Nothing. It shows you your mindsets. It shows you your wrongdoings. It shows you your character defects. It shows you all these things in life. It strengthens you as a person from the inside. As far as forgiveness and resentments and that work is ongoing, and it always will be. But you do see change, and you do realize, okay, you know what, I've forgiven myself for that. You might just not sit down and say, okay, I forgive myself. Over time, you'll be looking at something or hanging out with somebody and talking, and you'll be like, you know, when I talk about this, I no longer get that pit in my stomach. That guilt is gone. My backpack gets lighter, right? And it happens, again, a lot through action. There's ways to make amends to people. There's personal amends, there's a whole bunch of amends. The role play that I did with the pastor, that was an amend. I couldn't give it to my father, so he let me as an outlet to him, which is weird, but it was good. It was really good. But living amends are one of the biggest things, I think, is when, like my son, when he comes to me and says, Dad, I'm proud of you. He's 11 years old. He hugs me or speaks in a room full of people and says, my dad is awesome. I've seen where he's been. I've seen where he's come. And that's huge for me to show them I was in the darkest pit of life, and I brought myself out. And, you know, with addiction, I'm very open with my children. I do dumb it down in some sense because their age, but I'm very open with the sense that I can show them that, right? Because no one taught me that. But those are life experiences that I want to show my kids. And they've phoned me and they've all told me, even my daughter, that you're a different person. You're happy, right? And that comes with time. And without me for saying I'm sorry and going into detail about every little wrong I've done, I'd be here forever, and I'm not going to live that long.
No, yeah.
But living amends is the biggest thing, and definitely getting there is a slow process. It's again, I'm huge, small steps. Yeah. One thing is, don't foreshadow in the future too much. Don't worry about what's happening in a year, because you're not there. You're not even at tomorrow yet. Yeah. It's not even supper time yet. How the heck are you worrying about that? You're gonna drive yourself insane. Again, it's so much easier said than done. But small steps, small mindsets, micro goals turn into major goals. You can break down and use that in any aspect of life. You can use it with your mental health. You can use it as in your fitness. You can use it as, with addictions, with career goals, with personal goals, relationship goals, with kids. You can break it down into micro goals for everything. Like mental health, one for me when I was really struggling is I couldn't get out of bed, couldn't find purpose, lost all purpose. So you start looking for gratifications, like you need gratifications, instant gratifications, yeah, so you forget about that. Well, you know what, I got up this morning, I did the dishes. As small as that sounds, you're being productive, you're being the best person you can today. right? There's highs and lows and stuff, and I've rode a lot of highs lately, especially in 4 years, but I've also had some lows where it's a new battle because I've never dealt with those lows sober. And so now it's like, what do I do now? I don't have any of these skill sets to do this. Before it was like, just hide from it and run. So as far as coaches goes, I have a good group of people I can lean on. And there's a lot of support, and that's one thing that anybody, don't be afraid to ask for help. A good thing is like the groups and anybody, even if you don't like, if you're not ready for any of that stuff, I'm open to everybody and anybody. I could care less who you are, what walk of life you are. Reach out to me.
Yeah.
I'll go for a tea. I'd say coffee, but I don't drink coffee. I'll go for a tea with you and chat. Just getting it open and realizing that you're not alone and that there is support out there is huge.
I think when you've been through an experience like what you've been through, like I can relate to a little bit because of my mental health journey and how dark it was and things like that, and the steps you need to take, and reaching out is so important in mental illness, because I think mental illness and addiction play hand in hand, and you don't want to reach out. Like the natural instinct is just dark, but reaching out is so important. When you say living amends, is it positive affirmations? Is that what you're...
So what I mean living amends is an instance like my mindsets have changed, my actions have changed, my everything has changed. I'll give an example. When I was in my addiction, I was a very grumpy person because I was very self-involved and everything was guilt-driven and poor me, right? And I was a very angry person. So if I had any conflict whatsoever, I would unleash all of that onto you, subconsciously.
Wow.
But I would just be like, ugh, don't poke the bear. And that's pretty much where it was. As Scott can really attest to this. I was, what did he call me? Oh, a grumpy Gus or something to that effect. You can hear him saying it. And in the matter of a few months after, I was already sober, I quit smoking, but after I started losing weight and then going to the psychological side of things and understanding about everything, I started to realize, and that's when I started doing the steps of looking inward instead of outward. The inward reflection. It's a very hard step, and no one ever says, okay, I'll look inward. It's uncomfortable there. Right? Stand in front of a mirror for 20 minutes. You're going to pick out faults. You're never going to look for good things. You're going to just start picking. The positive affirmation, but it's positive change in life. So I went to a wedding a couple years ago. I was a few years sober, and I'm a goofball. I'm the guy dancing on the tables, right? And I was scared that being sober would take that away from me. I didn't know who I was. 4:30 in the morning sober, I'm dancing on the table with my shirt off, spinning it around. People are looking at me. I'm having a heyday. And I heard someone in the back, one of my friends, he's quite intoxicated. He's like, he's sober. And I stopped for a second. I said, yes, I am. but another positive affirmation, that's why I was telling that story, is happiness. Right? You can be happy with a lot of things. And I think first thing in addiction or with mental illness is that it's so far from your mind at that point when you're in that dark place. You're not looking at happy. You're just like, oh. And yes, you want to hide. You want to hide and shelter yourself, and you don't want to reach out. And that's why I said try to find even one person you can talk to. Just one. That's all it takes is one. Just to even have, it doesn't even have to talk about anything in that. Just relate about something else, right? And it starts, it builds, right? Positivity attracts positivity.
And I like what you're saying about that, because, and you alluded to this before, that your addictions weren't just alcohol. It's not like, it's almost, and sometimes we can fall in that trap of like, we're addicted to being negative, like, and kind of like, it's funny that it becomes that way, but like, it's sort of changing those habits and behaviors. And because, I think because it's like, we can draw into negative, because we don't really see it as a vice as much as we would like something like drugs or alcohol, but those like negative comments or negative, things that we do those are habits that we can change. And as we do that and then like replace it with things that make us happier, whether it's, fitness or just positive thinking or prayer, meditation, like those are things that kind of, help us take a step back and be better for those around us, for our, to improve our relationships.
Yeah.
Like for me, it was like resetting was going out for a run. And I don't know, like usually comments, sometimes I come back a happier person. And that's like sometimes it's like, yeah, I'm like, go.
Sometimes I'm like, you need this. I'll take care of all of our kids. That's easier. But he's not like he's an angry person, but there's sometimes that, anybody. But yeah, for me, it's funny because like when I went through my mental illness and things were really hard, I would grasp onto a thought of, I need to talk to one person. This one person can help me. So I'd call that one person, and they were able to help me. And like, so it was like, that was hard just to do. Like, and so like, it was kind of an amazing experience, like grasping onto those one little thoughts of like that one person reaching out. Like, cause I'm such a social person, I get, energized around people. Like COVID was hard for me.
Oh yeah, I get it too. Me too. Yeah.
Because I need to be around people. Like that helps my mental health. So like, yeah, it's those steps are really hard to take when you're in it. And I think just listening to your story is like, wow, you are a great quitter.
I'm a great quitter.
And you're dedicated. Like that's loyal to yourself. Like, cause so many times like, especially with addiction, you can mess up and not be loyal to yourself or your goals. And that's so easy to do, but that's the thing that goes through my head is, wow, you are an amazing person.
Yeah, and it's loyalty. It's funny because when you're going through your process and stuff, you look at your faults, you look at your strengths, and loyalty's always been one of mine in everything. I'm a very loyal person, loyal to a fault. My mother again says, I'll give a lot of credit to my mother, but I'm loyal to a fault. I'm honest to a fault. I'm still trying to learn tact, because sometimes I'm too honest, and I don't really take into account how it's going to affect the situation or emotions and stuff. So I do take more credibility than I ever would before, because people, have shown me that I need to, and you have to take self-care. That's huge, because I was a people pleaser. I still am to a sense, but I do have boundaries now. I will always have my hand out for people. Even in my addiction, right? In the worst of it, I had my hand out. Mental illness and addiction do go hand in hand quite often. It's an addiction of the body and an allergy of the mind, is what we say. It's a thing we'll never outgrow. It's a thing we'll heal, we'll never cure. There's no cure for it.
Right.
But we learn to adjust, we learn to heal.
It's so hopeful hearing you say that you can heal from it.
And don't let small slip-ups in life knock you down. There's so much involved with it. There's a lot of dark times. There's a lot of struggles. There's a lot of ups and downs. There's a lot of, 10 steps forward, 80 steps back. There's a lot of that. So perseverance is huge. But motivation and dedication and conviction, that's one thing that everyone I know, whether they like me or not, will say that I'm a man of conviction. I'm tenacious, if you will. Once I make my mind up, I'm in it forever. I'm in it. And when I was grumpy, and my old self, the grumpy Gus or whatever Scott called me, it came across very negative, very angry, very evil, very, not pure intentions. Even though they were, everything I portrayed, negativity spawns negativity, positivity attracts positivity, right? And I've lived it. I know it. So it's dealing with people on same issues that I dealt with in the past. Those exact same issues now. It's a different approach for me. And same mental thoughts, same process in my mind, but different execution. And that's just through change that's happened. And change is huge. Change is scary. And I'll say this as an alcoholic. There are two things an alcoholic hates. One is change, and the other is things staying the same. So you're very limited on what you can do. So, and I think that can be put into a lot of people's lives. If you look at it, right? Change is scary, but so is staying put and not changing. Especially when you're in a situation where you need help, or you're in a situation where you're scared. Yeah. And that's where, again, where that saying, and I'll say it a lot, I love it, is I'm living my life for the first time too.
I like that saying because, like, what comes to my mind is, like, not only asking for compassion from people, but actually that's not as much. When you say I'm living my life for the first time, all I think about is everybody else who's had a bad day, everybody else who's like struggling, everybody else. And I love that. I think it just, if we all lived like that, we would have so much more compassion for people.
For sure we would, and that's where it is, to own what you do.
Yeah.
Not how others react, not what they did back, but own your side, because if everyone owned their side, things would be a lot different.
I need to work on that too.
We all do, and I still do. I am no expert by any means, but I've had to go through it, and I've been forced to live through it, and I've been forced to change a lot of the times uncomfortably and against my will. But now I do have the will for it, and it is my choice. It's scary as heck if you look at it through a telescope, but if you just look what's right in front of you and take very, very small steps, it eventually gets easier, just like anything else, right?
Right.
And when you started running, you can't go out and do a marathon your first time. Or if you could, you'd be Scott.
But he took a long time.
But he took a long time too, right? So you have to do small steps, like cycling. When I got into that too, I remember going to Scott, and the first couple times it was challenging, right? Like, he's dumbing it down, I can tell.
Yeah.
But he's helping me. We did a mountain climb out in Highwood, and I was going up the back summit, and it's like this. Well, it's probably not, but it felt like this. And I'm going, and I'm like, oh. This man grabbed my backpack with a fist, his bike in one hand, and he cycled up the hill with me. He pushed me up. I'll never forget that, because that's the vision I have when helping someone. He struggled and went through hell for 15 or 20 minutes, so I didn't have to. I'll spare 15 minutes to anybody anytime I can. And I don't think he meant it that way. He just wanted to get me up the hill. But a lot of things came with that.
Oh yeah, that's symbolic in so many ways.
But I think too, like when we go back to that idea of like, this is each of our first times running through this life, if we can give each other grace and say, okay, well, this person, we don't know what they're going through, and reaching out a hand of help is so important for us to do. Yes. Just to kind of like be there and like, you know.
Compassion and empathy are huge.
Yeah.
You know, that's the biggest thing I think I'll take out of this is the empathy I've learned. Is that I need to take a step back and realize that everybody is going through similar or worse than I have ever been through. Compassion and empathy go a long way, and it's, again, you just got to start somewhere. And like I said, I'm open to anybody. I don't care. I put myself out there for anybody. My motto, and I've came up with this my entire life, but my motto is, I'll try anything twice. Circumstances play a huge role in things, and I will always do things more than once to make sure that I understand. That way I know if I like them, dislike them, but that's just kind of my motto.
I'm sure our audience has been really inspired by your story, Steve, and thanks so much for sharing it. I've like learned a lot, and I think that we can all take some hope in the change that we can make in our lives to kind of like approach that.
It's been really amazing. I think there's so many principles that people don't have to go through what you're going through, but they can take the same principles and apply them in their own lives so that they can make the changes needed. It's what matters most. You know, and it's amazing that you can say that you have relationships with all the people that are important to you, even after the hard, that there can be beauty from ashes.
There's not many people that I'm not in contact with from before. I've made the amends and we've worked through it all, but exactly, you realize real quick what matters most in life, and you work towards what you want. And thank you very much for having me.
Oh, it's been awesome. Right.
So we can, people can find you on Facebook, Instagram.
All my stuff, and yeah, feel free to reach out anytime. If I don't get back to you that day, I'll get back to you eventually.
So yeah, if you're going through any struggles similar to what Stephen has been through, he's lots of different things you could provide as far as
Resources.
I can give you beard grooming tips too if you'd like.
Yeah, absolutely.